We're following breaking news developments in the deaths of actor Gene Hackman and his wife, with investigators now calling those deaths suspicious.
On February 26, 2025, FBI agents forced their way through the reinforced steel gates of Gene Hackman's $4 million estate in Santa Fe, New Mexico. They expected to find answers about the mysterious deaths of the legendary actor and his wife. What they found instead was a narrow stone staircase hidden behind the library wall, spiraling down into absolute darkness. And what waited at the bottom would haunt every agent who descended those steps. The tunnel stretched for hundreds of feet beneath the property. The walls were covered in symbols no one could identify. The air was thick, cold, heavy with the weight of secrets that had been buried for decades. And at the very end, sealed behind a rusted iron door that hadn't been opened in what looked like a century, they discovered something so disturbing that the FBI has refused to publicly comment on the contents to this day. This is the story they don't want you to know. The story of what really lies beneath the mansion of one of Hollywood's greatest actors. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why some secrets are buried underground, and why some of them should stay there. The discovery. Let's start with what we know for certain. At approximately 11 in the morning on February 26, 2025, authorities arrived at Gene Hackman's secluded estate deep within the forests outside Santa Fe. The 95-year-old Oscar-winning actor and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, hadn't been seen or heard from in days.
Try to figure out the exact cause. And I think the autopsy is going to be key, and the toxicology. But again, in my experience, that could take a while.
When a handyman finally gained access to the property, he made a grim discovery. Both Gene and Betsy were dead inside the mansion, along with their dog. The official statement from the Santa Fe Sheriff's Department said foul play was not suspected. Natural causes. Case closed. But here's the catch. In that same statement, authorities described the deaths as suspicious enough in nature to require a thorough search and investigation. They obtained a search warrant. They brought in FBI agents. They swept the entire property from the roof to the foundation, checking every vent, every gas line, every possible entry point. And that's when things took a turn that no one anticipated. During that search, investigators discovered something that wasn't on any blueprint, something that had been deliberately concealed. A hidden passageway behind the walls of Hackman's private library, leading to an underground tunnel system that stretched far beneath the estate. The question is, what was down there? And why has the FBI gone almost completely silent about what they found? The mansion in the woods. To understand the significance of this discovery, you first need to understand the property itself. Gene Hackman's estate wasn't just a retirement home for a wealthy actor. It was a fortress. The kind of compound you'd expect from someone with government-level security concerns, not a man who supposedly stepped away from Hollywood to enjoy a quiet life in the New Mexico wilderness. The property sat deep, within dense, almost impenetrable forest.
Deputies going room to room after being called to clear their Santa Fe home in February.
Two totally separate areas.
No, it's strange.
Discovering the couple and one of their dogs all deceased.
The main residence was surrounded by towering stone walls and reinforced steel gates that wouldn't look out of place at a military installation. Motion sensors monitored every inch of the perimeter. Thermal cameras tracked movement day and night. A sophisticated surveillance system recorded everything, around the clock, year after year. And then there was the staff, hand-picked, thoroughly vetted. Every single employee was bound by ironclad legal agreements that prevented them from ever speaking publicly about what went on inside those walls. Think about that for a moment. This wasn't the home of a man who simply valued his privacy. This was the sanctuary of someone who had something to protect, something worth building walls around, something worth keeping hidden from the outside world. And get this, the interior of the mansion was equally extraordinary. Hallways lined with original masterpieces from legendary painters, furniture dating back centuries, once belonging to European aristocrats. Chandeliers rumored to have hung in the grand halls of ancient palaces. Gardens tended by world-class horticulturists, filled with plants so rare they exist in only a handful of places on Earth. Gene Hackman had accumulated a collection of artifacts and antiquities that would rival some museums. But the most significant piece of his collection wasn't on display anywhere visitors could see it. It was buried 60 feet beneath the ground. The hidden passage. According to sources close to the investigation, the discovery of the tunnel was entirely accidental. During recent renovations on the property, workers stumbled upon something they weren't supposed to find, a section of wall in the library that didn't match the rest of the structure. The craftsmanship was different, the materials were older, and when they investigated further, they realized the wall was actually a door that led to a narrow stone passageway descending into darkness. The workers immediately reported what they had found, but here's where things get strange. Instead of simply documenting the discovery and moving on, the FBI took over the investigation entirely. They sealed the entrance, they restricted access to that section of the mansion, and they brought in specialists whose expertise went far beyond standard crime scene analysis. Why would a hidden passage beneath an actor's home require that level of federal attention? The answer lies in what they found at the bottom of those stairs. When investigators finally descended into the tunnel, they immediately noticed something unusual about the construction. The walls weren't made of ordinary stone. They were reinforced with a material that engineers are still struggling to identify. The construction techniques didn't match anything from the modern era. In fact, preliminary analysis suggests the tunnel may have been built decades ago, possibly even a century or more. Someone had designed this passageway to last, or more accurately, someone had designed it to keep something hidden forever. But the walls themselves were only the beginning. The symbols. As the agents made their way deeper into the tunnel, their flashlights began illuminating something even more disturbing. Symbols, hundreds of them, carved directly into the stone walls, stretching from floor to ceiling for the entire length of the passageway. Some of the markings resembled ancient alchemical signs, the kind you might find in medieval manuscripts about transmutation and forbidden knowledge. Others looked like technical schematics, detailed blueprints for machines and devices that seemed impossibly advanced for the era in which they were supposedly created. And then there were symbols that didn't match any known language or writing system, patterns that linguists and cryptographers have been unable to decode, shapes that seem to follow mathematical principles that don't correspond to any recognized field of obic study. One investigator described the experience of walking through that tunnel as stepping into someone else's nightmare. The symbols seemed to press in from all sides, creating an almost claustrophobic sense of being watched, of being studied, of being measured by something you couldn't see. But the symbols were just the prelude, because at the end of that tunnel, the agents found themselves standing at the entrance to a vast underground chamber. And what waited inside would change everything they thought they knew about Gene Hackman and his mysterious estate. The chamber. The chamber was enormous, far larger than anything the tunnel itself would have suggested. It stretched in every direction, with ceilings so high the agents' flashlights couldn't reach the top. The air was different down there, colder, heavier, thick with the smell of age and decay, as if the room had been sealed away from the outside world for generations. And lining every wall, stacked in towering rows that disappeared into the shadows, were wooden crates. Hundreds of them. Some appeared relatively modern, perhaps a few decades old. Others had crumbled with age, their contents spilling out across the stone floor in piles of yellowed paper and corroded metal. The agents began systematically opening the crates, documenting everything they found. The first boxes contained photographs, hundreds of them, fragile, yellowed with age, depicting faces and places that no one recognized. Some showed what appeared to be secret meetings in dimly lit rooms, figures huddled around tables covered in documents and maps. Others captured strange, unidentified locations, buildings and structures that don't appear in any known archive. A few photographs showed individuals whose names have been lost to history, men and women in clothing from different eras, their expressions serious, their purposes unknown. Each image seemed to hold a hidden story, a piece of a puzzle that no one had ever tried to assemble. But the photographs were only the beginning. The documents. Beside the photographs, investigators discovered leather-bound files filled with hastily scribbled notes. The handwriting varied. Some entries were neat, methodical, clearly written by trained professionals. Others were frantic, almost illegible, as if the author was racing against time to record information before it was too late. The contents of these documents are still classified, but sources have revealed fragments of what they contain. records of events that appear to have been deliberately erased from official history, accounts of projects and operations that were never supposed to become public knowledge, names, dates, locations, all carefully documented and then hidden away in this underground vault. Some passages suggest deception at the highest levels. Others hint at secrets that could destabilize entire institutions if they ever came to light. And a few entries describe discoveries so disturbing that even reading about them requires security clearance that most government officials don't possess. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of these documents isn't what they contain, it's who wrote them. Analysis of the handwriting and the materials used suggests that entries in these files span multiple generations. Some were written decades ago. Others appear to be much more recent, which means someone has been actively maintaining this archive, adding to it, protecting it, for longer than Gene Hackman even owned the property. The question is, was Hackman the guardian of these secrets? Or was he just the latest in a long line of custodians, each one sworn to protect what lies beneath? The artifacts. As investigators continued their search of the chamber, they began uncovering objects that defied easy explanation. Strange metallic devices with no apparent purpose, tools bearing engravings that don't match any known manufacturer, mechanisms so precise and complex that engineers estimate they would require technology far beyond what existed when the tunnel was supposedly built. One crate contained what appeared to be astronomical instruments, but configured in ways that don't align with any recognized system of celestial observation. Another held glass containers filled with substances that laboratories are still trying to analyze. And then there were the maps, detailed cartographic documents showing tunnel systems beneath cities around the world, underground networks connecting locations that have no business being connected, routes and passages that, if they actually exist, would represent one of the greatest hidden infrastructures in human history. Some of these maps are marked with symbols matching the ones carved into the tunnel walls. Others contain notations and codes that cryptographers are still working to break, but all of them suggest something terrifying: that the tunnel beneath Gene Hackman's estate isn't unique, that it's part of something much larger. A network that has existed in the shadows for generations, maintained by people whose identities remain unknown, serving purposes that we can only guess at. The Iron Door. But here's where things get truly horrifying. As the agents swept their flashlights across the chamber, the beam landed on something partially hidden in the deepest shadows. An old iron door set into the far wall, its surface covered in rust and grime. The door had no handle, only a heavy, corroded lock that seemed designed for one purpose: to keep something sealed away forever. The agents tried to open it. They brought in specialized equipment. They consulted with experts. But the lock wouldn't budge. Whatever mechanism secured that door, it wasn't designed to be opened by ordinary means. And that's when investigators noticed something even more disturbing. The floor in front of the door was marked with circular patterns. When viewed from above, these patterns resembled celestial star maps, configurations of constellations that don't match our current night sky, as if whoever created them was mapping the heavens as they appeared centuries ago, or signaling something beyond this world. The FBI has refused to comment on what they believe lies beyond that iron door, but rumors spreading through investigative circles paint a disturbing picture. Some believe the door leads to deeper levels of the tunnel system, passages that extend even further beneath the earth. Others suspect it conceals a bunker, possibly connected to Cold War-era operations, or even older, more secretive organizations. A few investigators have suggested something even more unsettling: that what lies behind that door isn't entirely of this world. The neighbors' stories. The people who lived near the Hackman estate always knew something was different about that property. Some remember cryptic conversations with Gene Hackman himself, encounters where the actor spoke in riddles, hinting at unseen dangers and ancient betrayals, without ever quite explaining what he meant. He would reference guardians and obligations and prices that must be paid, then change the subject before anyone could ask follow-up questions. Others recall seeing shadowy figures moving in and out of the property at unusual hours. Brief visits in the middle of the night, faces obscured, purposes unknown. Vehicles with no license plates that would arrive, stay for precisely 30 minutes, and then disappear without a trace. There are stories of strange sounds emanating from beneath the ground at odd hours, Mechanical noises, rumbling, vibrations that could be felt in houses hundreds of yards away. Sounds like something was being constructed far underground, or like something down there was trying to get out. And then there are the disappearances, former staff members who left the estate and were never seen again. Workers from decades past who vanished during construction projects on the property. Local historians who tried to dig into the property's past and simply stopped responding to calls, their research abandoned, their files mysteriously emptied. The connection between these disappearances and the underground tunnel has never been officially established. But the pattern is undeniable. People who get too close to the secrets beneath that estate have a tendency to vanish. The deaths, which brings us back to Gene and Betsy Hackman. The official cause of death for the 95-year-old actor was listed as hypertensive and atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, with Alzheimer's disease as a significant contributory factor. Natural causes, nothing suspicious, but the timing raises questions that the official report can't answer. Why were their deaths discovered only after days of silence? Why did authorities describe the situation as suspicious enough to require a full FBI investigation? Why was a search warrant necessary for the home of a man who supposedly died of old age? And most importantly, why did the FBI immediately seal the underground tunnel and restrict all access to the chamber? Some investigators believe the Hackmans were silenced because they knew too much, that after decades of guarding whatever lies beneath that estate, something changed. Maybe they tried to go public. Maybe they attempted to destroy the evidence. Or maybe someone else decided the secret was too important to leave in the hands of a 95-year-old man with Alzheimer's. Others suggest the tunnel itself played a role in their deaths, that someone used those underground passages to enter the mansion undetected, bypassing all of Hackman's sophisticated security systems. A few theories go even darker, that whatever was sealed behind that iron door finally got out, that the Hackmans weren't killed by any human hand, but by something far older and far more dangerous. We may never know the truth, but the questions won't go away. The ongoing investigation. The FBI continues to maintain a presence at the Hackman estate. Forensic teams are analyzing every artifact, every document, every symbol carved into those ancient walls. Advanced techniques are being employed to detect invisible residues, trace DNA, and decipher the cryptographic messages left behind. But the official statements remain frustratingly vague, carefully worded, almost as if authorities are deliberately keeping something under wraps, controlling the narrative, ensuring that certain information never reaches the public. That silence only fuels the speculation. Some researchers believe these tunnels are remnants of a forgotten military project, perhaps connected to nuclear testing facilities or Cold War bunker programs. Others think they're evidence of secret societies that have operated in the shadows for centuries, organizations whose reach extends into the highest levels of government and industry. And then there are those who suggest something even more unsettling, that what lies beneath the Hackman estate predates all of that. These tunnels were built by people whose names have been erased from history, for purposes that we're only now beginning to understand. The legacy. Gene Hackman spent his life portraying characters caught in webs of conspiracy, deception, and hidden truths. In The French Connection, he played a detective who uncovered a drug smuggling operation that stretched from the streets of New York to the highest levels of organized crime. In The Conversation, he was a surveillance expert who discovered that his own work was being used for purposes far darker than he ever imagined. In Enemy of the State, he portrayed a former intelligence operative who understood exactly how deep the shadows of government secrecy could reach. These weren't just roles, they were warnings. Looking back at Hackman's career now, it's impossible not to see patterns. The same themes recurring again and again. Ordinary people stumbling onto secrets that powerful forces will do anything to protect. Conspiracies hiding. In plain sight, the terrifying realization that the world we see is just a surface, and beneath it lies something far more complex and far more dangerous. Perhaps Gene Hackman was trying to tell us something all along. Perhaps the characters he chose to play were reflections of what he knew was real, what he had seen, what he was protecting. Or perhaps he was simply preparing us for the day when someone would finally discover what was buried beneath his home. The question. Here's what we know for certain. A legendary actor and his wife died under circumstances that officials describe as both natural and suspicious. An underground tunnel system was discovered beneath their estate, filled with artifacts, documents, and symbols that no one can explain. A sealed iron door at the end of that tunnel guards secrets that the FBI refuses to discuss. And every day, new questions emerge that the official story cannot answer. What was Gene Hackman hiding? Who built that tunnel? What lies behind that iron door? And why, after decades of secrecy, did someone decide that now was the time for these secrets to be found? Beneath the mansions of the powerful, beneath the forests and mountains and cities we call home, there may be entire worlds we've never discovered. Networks of tunnels stretching for miles. Chambers filled with the accumulated secrets of generations. Doors that were sealed shut for reasons we can't comprehend. The question isn't whether these secrets exist. The evidence beneath the Hackman estate proves they do. The question is whether we're ready to know what's hiding in the darkness, and whether some doors are better left closed forever. What do you think lies beneath Gene Hackman's estate? What secrets are the FBI protecting? And what would you do if you found a hidden tunnel beneath your own home? Share your theories in the comments below. And if you want to see more investigations into the hidden truths that powerful people don't want you to know, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because this is just the beginning.